Hello my fancy EDM producer fellows, today I'm making a tutorial on Slap House, not producing the track from scratch, but we're gonna focus on the main aspect in that kind of music, on the bass line, and how to make that sexy elastic bass line. If you know what I'm talking about, you've probably heard those kind of bass lines in latest songs. Yeah, it's kind of new, this genre is kind of new to the whole EDM market nowadays. To me, it's not even the whole new genre. It still sounds like deep house combined with probably some G house or maybe a little bit of Brazilian bass. And when it comes to vocals, it still has some pop flavor to it, right? We're gonna look at how this bass line, this whole elastic thing, this wumpy stuff, what they're made of, how are they produced, and what's behind the scenes when it comes to creating those kinds of drops. And one more thing, don't you forget to leave the comments. What do you specifically think about it? Should I make some other tutorials on that genre, covering some other aspects like creating and producing this kind of music? If not, please leave your thoughts on which genre should I make some more tutorials on, and I'm gonna be responding to all the comments, so please leave them below. Okay, now let's smoothly slide right into the FL Studio, and in there I'm gonna show you how I did this kind of slide elastic bass in my latest track. That was a cover of Diamonds, originally by Rihanna, of course. Okay, so let's look at the whole picture here. Here's exactly what's going on here and how this thing sounds so far. That's what's going on, and it might sound solid and bassy, but of course it's not perfect when it comes to mixing. It's still a draft, so that's what I want you to know. Don't you mind that dirty like relationships between sub bass and the main bass, so don't you mind those things. And I want you to see just the bass line and how I made this. Of course I'm gonna finish this and make this sound pretty. Before I get to the good stuff, before I start explaining what's going on behind the slide of the bass, how this wumpy stuff works, some of you might is gonna question me, how did you do that? What's that groovy thing? How did you make this groove? How did you solve relationships between like the kick and the bass? Is it sidechain or is it volume shapers? Of course, let's dedicate a few minutes explaining things behind the groove, behind the rhythm, and right after this we're gonna get to the good stuff. Let's just strip off all the unnecessary stuff here. We're not gonna need this, we're not gonna need vocals, and I guess that's it. For now we're gonna leave just the kick and the bass layers. Alright, so that's what we hear now. Of course there is a sidechain to it, and the sidechain is made with a regular sidechain compressors. Those are FabFilter Pro C2. That's how I made this. And there is a kick and a ghost kick, a really tiny short fraction of a kick routed into this mixer track, and it's also sent over with the sidechain connection to all the stuff that I need to do sidechain for me in this drop. The piano, the sub bass, and the bass, and the main bass itself. Yeah, it's all happening because of the sidechain Pro C2, and it might work with the connection of mixer track here, the sidechain mixer track. If you want to make it happen, you want to go here and then in the processing tab here and choose this ghosty tab in the stereo sidechain tab over here. Then you might want to turn on this external sidechain thing, and thanks to all those settings, this will duck to the kick when the time is right. Works perfectly, right? For the sake of your time, the efficiency, you might want to use instead just a regular volume shaper. Please use just a regular volume shaper for this. It will save a time. I don't know why I did this compression thing. I was just flexing in front of the FL Studio. Those volume shapers like Groove Beat, Kickstart, LFO Tool, whatever makes you tick, dude. Then, when it comes to groovy thing, this like little swinging groove, you might hear this Alan Walker stuff behind the scenes. So whenever you hear this slightly weird and not regular groove that you want to like swing your hips to, you need to allocate this and think about it. What's happening there? There is probably a swing knob. It has something to do with it, right? So there's a swing knob up here turned up to the 50%. Do you see it? Do you see it? Yeah, it's happening. If there wouldn't be any swing to it, that would sound so boring and annoying. So you might want to check this out. Boring as dull pluck. So if we would turn it up to 50%, that would be the whole nother deal, right? especially you want to notice those things over here. This swing knob, what it does, it just delays those parts of your part. If there wouldn't be anything over here, you wouldn't notice this swing. So that's what's happening. Every second and fourth fraction of a beat gets delayed by some percentage, some millisecond, depending on how far you've like turned this knob up here. Alrighty, what's happening behind those layers of a bass, the whole bass system here? There are a few layers, as you may notice here. This thing is not precisely a layer, it's just a little helper for this main bass. Yeah, this whole bass consists of the sub bass. It's just a regular preset of Silent 1 here. Nothing so fancy, you may choose whatever you want. Nothing slidey going on over here. You might want to slide the sub bass also with the regular bass, but I didn't do that. I don't know why. Maybe I'm so lazy. And here's the kicker. That's this ear candy that we're gonna focus on later here, right? So that's where the slide is happening, and this is just a little helper. The upper layer for the bass that gives it this sharpness, this tightness, and the crispy sound is really only just upper frequencies. That's why I cut the whole system of low frequencies out of here. Just a sharpy little thingy, right? The last layer here is just an Omnisphere preset. It's just a guitar saying. Long story short, it's just a percussion helping the bass get its volume. And this little guy here is just a reversed copy of the main bass that you heard here. Oh, that's what's happening with those relationships. Let's swipe it up here. Whoomp. That's what does it. That effect, it's still popular. It's really valuable for the bass line to use those reverse basses from your original and main bass layer, right? So yeah, that's what's happening behind the layers. And let's finally see how this slidey bass works now. And you're gonna ask me, why the hell are you showing us samples when you're talking about building a bass line? You want to use synthesizers, right? Yo guys, would you relax? We're gonna use some synths, and I'm gonna show you how to do that with synths. But for this specific genre, for the slap bass, you want to use samples because it gives crispness, it gives constant sharpness, constant transient in those basses. It's gonna sound way crispier than those synths will sound. Even if you found like the perfect preset in Avenger and Serum and Inspire, because those are those synthesizers when you're gonna find those slap house and future house basses presets. There's a whole ton of them. Yeah, you want to just sample it, record it with Edison somehow, and you might want to use them as WAV files, right? And just do slides in the piano roll just like I did here. Yeah, first I'm going to explain how to do this with this sample, and then I'm going to explain how to do this with synth. We're going to use Spire for this, let's say. What's behind here, you can see that I just brought those notes up an octave, right? They're sitting on the C note here, but they're sliding up using this thing up here in the piano roll that's called a slide note. So when you hit this, the next note that you're going to create would be a slide note right here. So that's when you want to use it like that. As long as it's lower note overlays with the upper note, that's how long the slide is going to take, right? And I'm prolonging it even further for it to sound longer. Without it, it wouldn't be that cool. And this little guy is also up here just for this bass line, not to be boring. Some people use it just to lift it on the fifth note. If I wanted to use that on the fifth note, I would like place it over here, because when you want to find the fifth note to your note, you want to count up 7 half steps, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I would place it over here. That's how it's gonna sound. Depending on how high you're going to hit that note, you want to place those upper slide notes. And for the extreme results, you want to bring them up even 2 octaves. Some people sometimes place them below an octave, so you might find it handy to place it below. That's going to create an emulation of a tape stop effect, so you might want to use this as well. But those notes tend to be even shorter than those higher notes, like this. Good times. So yeah, that's what's happening behind the curtains over here with this bass. And when it comes to operating with synthesizers and using presets like real producers, right? Just kidding, guys. Doesn't matter what you use, like as long as your music sounds great. But just don't choose steal, please. Don't choose steal like loops, the whole ideas from other producers. That's what I'm trying to say. When you want to use those presets, let's pull up the Spire here. All right, I'm gonna copy here. I want to copy that whole baseline over here. When it comes to using synthesizers, and especially like those third-party synthesizers not related to FL Studio whatsoever, not from image line synthesizers, Spire, Silent One, Avengers, things like this, they're not going to work and listen to your slide notes because they're not scripted as such. They're not linking with your DAW correctly, so that's why those notes are not going to work. Never ever they're going to work. So that's when you want to use automation of this pitch wheel of your synthesizer. But before you use this pitch wheel, of course, you might want to find the perfect preset for your bassline. Let's choose this one, right? That sounds about right. Sounds decent enough. And when you've written that thing, let's cut it and place it over here. Bass synth, right? Turn it on here. That's when you want to utilize automation here. You just select here the pattern that repeats itself over and over. I'm going to select just one bar of it and then tweak this wheel for the FL Studio to recognize the third-party plugins articulation, and then right-click here on this little knob and create automation clip of this lately disturbed knob. It's going to create an automation for my bend wheel. Those are precisely the moments when I want to use this slide, utilize this slide. I want to bring it up an octave. But don't you forget that there's supposed to be an up and down relationship of 12 semitones. So whenever you see that pitch wheel, there's going to be a counter of those up and down digits. So you move how many semitones up or down, you want to bring that pitch. I want to go up 12 semitones, that means an octave, right? Those 12 half steps before I hit the same note up and down. You want to set it up before you create that automation. So that's it. We already have this thing going on over here, and I want to repeat that over and over again like this. You might want to bring this tension of the slope a bit down. That's going to sound better. Do you see that mistake that I just made? Always copy and paste those values in automation clips, just like that. So it always stays in the center of the key, of the tone. That sounds about right. But don't you forget that those things work better with samples, because they're always sharp when it comes to attack, and there's something going on behind when your notes are being placed at different values at different places. Like you use just a C note and then you stretch it down to G. When it's a sample, the sample rate just changes, and there's something happening in the sound that makes it being saturated with some other harmonics. So there's a whole other feature coming to using samples in your bassline. So you might want to use those instead. And of course, sometimes you just find samples that are better than other presets. They're always sharp and ready to use. That's it for this episode, I guess, guys. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment box. Do we need more slap house, or do we need something else on that channel? I will respond to you. And for now, I'm gonna keep working on that track. I'm gonna get it done as soon as possible, and I will see you in my future videos. I hope soon. Take care.
In a beautiful sea, I choose to be happy.